Hi, this is Karen, and I am making my very first video about cross stitching and a demonstration on how I do the sewing method while holding my linen in a hoop. So the hoop, the fabric in the hoop is very loosely held. You can see this is not drum tight like most people like to have their fabric when they're embroidering in a hoop, but this is actually very, very loose. And I hold the hoop in my left hand. Sometimes I put the hoop in a stand, but right now I'm just holding it in my hand, and I use my middle left finger underneath the fabric to push up, and I use my right hand, because I'm right-handed, to stitch, and I go in where I'm starting my stitch, and I just pop up two threads to the left, push my needle through and pull out, and then I finish the stitch by going down in the bottom right hand corner of the stitch. I call that Florida, going Washington to Florida. This is how I travel vicariously through my stitching. And then I come up at California, all the way to the west side. So now I'm going from Florida up to Maine, and come up at Washington, and then go back down at Florida. Then when I get to the end of the row, all I do is turn my hoop around. So now I'm looking at my work upside down, but that's how I manage to keep all my stitches at a uniform tension. Okay, so I'm watching myself stitch through the camera, so this is pretty awkward, but you'll see that I go up to the northwest corner, northeast corner, and come up in the northwest corner. Then I go down in the southeast corner and come up at the far west corner. So California to Maine, Maine to Washington, Washington to Florida, and then Florida to California, the next stitch along the row. And so this is how I stitch with a overdyed, hand-dyed floss. I'll get to the end of this row, and then I'll show you how I would normally stitch with a DMC, or a solid colored floss is different. I work those in columns rather than rows. So I'll just finish off this row. I love the ball-pointed needles by Sullivan when I'm stitching with my linen, because that needle just pops right to the place I want it to go very easily. Okay, so let's pretend like this is a DMC floss, and I would stitch this next area as a column rather than a row. So I would start in the bottom left, which is still California to Maine, but I'm going to start the next stitch up in the column. So I'm just doing California to Maine, coming back up at California of the next stitch higher in the row. So I'm just going like I'm going up the rungs of a ladder. Then when I get to the top of the ladder, then I would go back down, well, the top of the number of stitches that I'm actually doing. Then I would just start going back down that same ladder, always holding my needle pointing to the left, so I can naturally put it through. We'll have to get a left-hander to demonstrate how they do this. They probably just start at the bottom left side. But most of the time when I start a project, I start it down at the bottom right-hand side, and I work in columns as far as I can. And then I do jumping off points from there. But that's how I use a sewing method while it's in a hoop. And I just find that it's easier on my hands to do it this way. Sometimes I use a stand to hold my hoop. Sometimes I put my work in a scroll frame, but I still hold it loosely in the scroll frame so that I can use this method because it goes a lot faster for me. When I get to the top, I just start going, using the same holes that I did on the way up, just going back down, crossing those stitches. If I do any more videos, I'm going to find a different way to hold my camera because this is really awkward. But I think you get the idea. It's very simple. Happy stitching!